good evening and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back for our Tuesday fans forum with the boys, Mart and Kevin. Make sure you smash that like button, hit the subscribe button. We are on the road to 6K still, boys. I think we're about 218, I want to say, away from the big 6K. So we know we want to get there before the season starts. So please help us. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and get your comments in, get your questions in. I've got a few topics I want to cover with the lads, but obviously this is your show. So get your questions in and get your comments in. Anything Aston Villa related on and off the pitch. Kev, good to see you, mate. I see that hairstyle is looking really well. Actually, the head of hair is looking really full, mate. And yeah, how you doing, mate?
Well, I couldn't get in the hairdressers, could I? And listen, I won't complain. I've got plenty of things wrong with me in my life, my face and my body, but I'm 44 and I've still got all this, so I can't moan about it too much. But everyone will be pleased to know I'm getting a cut on Friday. So next week's podcast, I'll be looking sharp, hopefully.
And I don't know where Martin's gone. He's just started and he's ran off.
He had enough, mate. He said he's talking about my hair. He was like, I'm not listening to this inane chat.
Had to let the dogs back in. Had to let the dogs back in. They picked a great time to come back to the door.
Well, they were asking who let them out.
Yes, I was going to say that. Who let the dogs out, Mark?
Your barber.
Yeah.
How are you doing anyway, Martin? Good to see you on a Tuesday night.
Yeah, doing good. Second week in a row, so let's hope I can keep it consistent enough. And looking forward to this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to get started straight away. And good evening to everyone in the chat. As we say, get your comments in. And yeah, it's obviously your show, so please do keep your comments flying through. I want to get straight into it. Are you a little bit underwhelmed at the moment, Kev, in terms of Aston Villa's lack of activity, shall we say, in the transfer market? I think both incomings and outgoings.
It's only Kev checks date in the corner of his screen, the 8th of July, isn't it? So, I mean, it's not been that long since we've been able to do activity, and not loads. The big challenging teams have obviously done a bit of activity. Man City, who cares about the 115 charges? Just keep spending cash. Arsenal have obviously strengthened well. And obviously Liverpool have done really well. But outside of that, I know Newcastle have agreed the deal for Elanga. Has there been much else that's happened for, a Spurs, a Man United, a West Ham, a Brighton, a Brentford? Not really. So I do think, as we talk about every single transfer window, it is very much a case of, I've run out of milk. Let's get some more milk. I've lost a left back. Let's go and get a left back. Like, it's just a knock-on effect to things that happen. And actually, if Martinez goes, then there'll be probably a keeper coming in, but that won't happen until that happens. And it's going to be one of those situations. We all love a signing, don't we? Particularly when you're without football for ages in terms of club football. And there's obviously the Women's Euros on now, and there's obviously some poxy tournament they're playing somewhere in America for for some bizarre reason that no one gives a single solitary hoot about, I think.
Well done. Well maneuvered there.
Yeah, certainly not me. Thanks. But other than that, it's been, do you know what it is? It's because the season ended so disappointingly that we want something to give us a little bit of a Villa tonic, don't we? And actually, we haven't had it yet. So yeah, keep keeping an eye on those alerts for that announcement of somebody from to be fair, after last season's transfer window in the summer, we ended up buying players who didn't play anyway. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. But are you kind of a similar vein as Kev there? Just not really too panicked yet, Martin, and more to do with the fact that I guess we're a little bit not starved of football as such, but maybe craving a little bit of excitement, a bit of news in the football world, and particularly from an Aston Villa perspective in terms of why people are getting a bit jittery, as Kevin maybe said in the comments, about no sort of new signing.
Well, look, obviously the club has had to deal with other issues before the PSR deadline, hence PSR, and probably doing the outgoings for the Coutinho and probably other outgoings. That's probably going to be the main focus before you bring anybody in. So I'm not really too panicked as such because, you know, the lads have only come back to pre-season today or yesterday, I believe. You know, I want to probably look at his players, see who's up to scratch, who isn't, you know, and then he'll probably judge then. Some believe that, you know, one of the players, Baron Che, is probably going to get given a chance. Some are saying he's going to be gone. You never really know. So some of the loan players that have done really well are probably going to be considered like new signings. Are they going to strengthen the team? But I'm not really too panicked or too jittery as such because, you know, I think the squad that we have is incredible. Like, you know, maybe continue that momentum as such for the team is probably key. Maybe adding one or two players, you know, that'll be challenged to get into the team. And then never mind for someone who's going to go straight in as an immediate upgrade. You might see that maybe towards the end of the window, depending on how sales go, with it being Emi Martinez, of course, with the main talk, but he can't really make any moves unless Onana leaves United and no Black leaves Atletico Madrid, so he's stuck in the pick. So it's certain things that I'm not really too panicked. We still have our main gist of the squad. No one has left at all, thankfully, and if no one comes in, we keep who we keep, and say the loan players like Baron Che, Buendia, Costa are on the bench, you know, trying to prove themselves, then I consider them really kind of like new signs because then you still have that depth and quality in the team.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this for quite a while, Kev. And like I said, I will come to some comments in a little while about this situation, this talking point. But I have been thinking about this for a while in terms of, and I think we talked about this maybe a month or so ago about, you know, is there a world in which we don't make too many signings at all, and with the fact that we've had a settled pre-season, let's say, with not too many players, well, no European international competition or World Cup, no Copa America. You've got players coming in, reporting back on time in terms of, you know, when they're scheduled to return. You hopefully got maybe a season where you're a bit luckier in terms of injuries affecting the squad. You've got a Europa League that's not as demanding as the Champions League, but also a further year's experience in Europe. And you've got players who, as we know, Unai Emery likes to bed in players and get them experienced into the squad, like Onana, like Maatsen, like Garcia, like Daniel Marlon. Is there a fact of, you know, kind of working with what we've got as such? And, you know, maybe the likes of Watkins, Cash, one or two others who have been criticised throughout the season, you know, taking on that settled pre-season and hitting the ground running again next season.
Well, like doing an Arnie slot, basically. Like
pretty much, yeah. I mean, I probably didn't have to go on that massive ramble, and I could have just said that. But yeah,
I would have been shrewd enough to understand what you meant. Hopefully, no. Look, we'll spin it whatever way works for us, won't we?
I know, of course we will. Of course,
we
will.
Yeah. And actually, there's a lot of positives you could argue if actually you keep the core of the squad together. Probably bring in some kind of attacking option, you know, I would say, because we're a bit, you know, short with Asensio and Rashford out, but you might not have to do too much surgery. And yeah, if you kept that core, that squad is a squad that's performed well in the past, isn't it? You know, you take the sort of Luiz and Diaby and Duran out, and it was Champions League qualifying squad. You know, obviously the season before, pretty much. So, yeah, I think you'd need to bring some in, but you're absolutely right. You'd expect, and we've said this many times, a lot more from Ian Maatsen, a lot more from Daniel Marlon this season. Amadou Onana, definitely. Ross Barkley, you know, I think he's still, 30, 31. I still think he's got a lot to offer at this level for us. And there was a lot of injuries as well, wasn't there? So, you know, you might see a bit more of, obviously, Mings this season and Pau Torres, etc., etc. So, yeah, but let's be clear. If we want to kick on to that next level, if we want to kick on to getting back in the Champions League and to having a go at a trophy, by hook or by crook, I think we've got to have a bit of a go at it, haven't we? Really, we've done the clever work with the women's team. There could well be a couple of big sales. I think we've got to try and bring it in. The thing is, and we've discussed this in the past, and it's, you know, it might be a bit early to throw this in there, but let's roll with the punches. We've said we would just go with the flow. I think we need to bring in players that have got a certain type of mentality, and that's obviously been sorely lacking in key moments for us. So if we don't bring in those type of players that can change the squad's sort of mindset in winning, in the winning or losing moments, that knife's edge, then I would be pretty disappointed if we didn't bring in those type of players.
Yeah, I do have you right, but again, like you just said there, with regards to players, I mean, potentially not making any signings, and I think we've had a comment about who was it who made the comment? I'm trying to see it now, but just basically saying that we'd be able to play, some of the more fringe players, our bear in the garden, without signings. There are a number of support players who will get plenty of games. And I think this is something that you just mentioned before, Martin, about sort of taking a look at some players who went out on loan. I think Berenacea is probably the one that grabbed the headlines. I don't think Illing Jr. is going to, trouble the scorers so much. But, is there a case for Ross Barkley can stay fit for longer? I talked about Daniel Marlin there. He didn't get much of an opportunity last season when he came in January. Garcia seemed to come in and then drop out. Lamar Bogard, is there a case for some of these players having matured for another season, having matured for a couple of years, with the club, getting to sort of 22, 23, 24 years of age and now showing what they can do? I mean, like I say, our supporters kind of a bit quick to write players off as not being good enough. And then, all of a sudden they come through and they're just like, well, where the hell did this player come from? And it's just a summer of growth, a summer of development, of fitness, whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, this player who you didn't notice is now coming in and challenging for the first team.
Yeah, I think I've learned to grow a bit of patience with players coming into the squad under Unai Emery. I think albeit the best example of that has been Morgan Rogers, in my opinion. When we signed him in January, he wasn't necessarily getting a lot of starts or a lot of minutes, but when he came on, he had glimpses of what he could do. We could see the potential that was there. Some may have written him off quite easy, going, what are we doing, sign a championship player? Why didn't we just keep him at Middlesbrough on loan and try and sell him on like some others that we've done with? But you see, this last season just gone, he was incredible. He was easily one of the best players alongside Yuri Tillemans. But when I look at Garcia and Malin as such, who came in January, they've kind of been molded a little bit. Malin probably hasn't got as much game time, nor is Garcia. So maybe are they being molded into that team? Because when we see Garcia play, and I do love Garcia, I can see a player there. He busts forward. He's not afraid to take players on. He's not afraid, to try and break the line, and because he'll get the cover at the back, whereas Matty Cash looking to get the ball and he kind of passes backwards, and when he does go forward, there's a little bit of hesitant to try and beat that man, maybe draw the foul. And then when we look at Malin, his runs in behind are so intelligent for the likes of Yuri Tillemans to find them, or any other player to try and find them. And we've seen him chip in with some big goals, even though he got limited game time in that time frame. He still chipped in with some big goals. And I just think that we have to be kind of patient with players, coming into the squad, because it's not a case of, coming into the squad and you're going to be a world beater straight away. That just never happens. It's once in a lifetime, really, where you try and sign that player who's a world beater straight away. We're kind of a club that are going to have to mold players into world beaters. We've seen it with, I think the best example, another one would be Jurgen Klopp. He took players, weren't exactly world beaters, but he made them into world beaters. And that's what Unai Emery's planning on doing, is signing smartly and making them into world beaters. Yes, we might have to be a little bit patient, but I'm willing to do that. That's the direction we're going in. And I think that's an exciting direction to be going in.
Yeah. We'll just round up on this in a second. I did have a comment from Michael. He mentioned, he goes back to Emery's words, he will be happy if he has the same squad that ended last season. Now, it doesn't look like he's going to have that. I don't think we're going to sign Asensio or any of the loan players, Asensio, Disasi or Rashford. But what I would say to that is, again, something that I was thinking about, and I think I've mentioned it in our chat, Kevin, our WhatsApp group, about Villa being, and you've mentioned this numerous times about Aston Villa being a real team of momentum swings, and especially under Unai Emery. And the fact that we did win 8 out of the last 10 Premier League games last season does potentially suggest that Emery kind of really likes likes the core and the nucleus of the squad that he's got. Maybe I do think we need a couple of additions, particularly pace up front, and like I say, a right back, maybe a cover at centre back. But in principle, you want to kind of harness that momentum and maybe the character like you talked about and the mindset that you talked about. Maybe that's something that the players can call upon, that are part of that group, part of that squad, and not want to sort of go through that disappointment again, but also build on that momentum from last season that goes into this next season.
Well, there's no doubt, it is there, isn't it? That momentum, because that's the most disappointing thing for me. Obviously, bar not qualifying for the Champions League, or beating PSG when we should have, or beating Palace at Wembley to get to the final. I mean, outside of those three unbelievably disappointing things, is that the effort that we put in when we look at those fixtures, a Newcastle, a Brighton, a Bournemouth, a Brentford, you're playing tough teams, and Nottingham Forest do a third in the league. To get the points haul that we got from that 24 points was an out of 30 was tremendous. It really was. And the form was fantastic. And yet at the end of it, we really had nothing to show for it because, VAR decision, we didn't perform at Old Trafford. And, but of course that didn't help. So if you can take that into next season, then you're going to have a pretty good start, because they often say players, when you've got too many players coming in, it can disrupt a squad. It can take time to settle and bed in to particularly the Premier League and the pace of the Premier League. So if you've got a settled squad, there's clearly benefits of that. But we also know that back end of last year, Emery said to the squad, I'm going to need to get people in to help you, because we were not performing in Europe and the Premier League. We were struggling, particularly after Champions League matches, weren't we, in terms of that next game? So we obviously made signings. Disasi did play his part, albeit much more earlier on. Rashford, slowish start, really came into it. Asensio, quick start, and then obviously dropped off a little bit. So, but across that period of time, even Garcia a couple of times early on, they all contributed towards the team finishing the season strongly. So when he says, I'd be happy if I had the same team, is he feeling like it's either a Rashford or another similar, Asensio or similar, another centre-back, etc.? Because if that's the case, I think I'll probably be pretty happy with that. I think if we got some players in of real quality, probably right back as well, I'd like to see someone coming in, another centre-half, a number 10 type character. Jay Felix, anybody? I'm going to mention his name again. And obviously, someone that can put the ball in the net, then yeah. But then I also, part of me does think, and this is the bit that sometimes, it's almost that, be careful what you wish for sometimes, but is it time to cash in on a Watkins or a Martinez? And I love Watkins and what he's done for us, and everything he's done over the last 5 years, and I love Martinez, but is it time to maybe try and go a different way, try a different idea? I know that it's not easy to replace those goals, and I love Emmy and what everything he's done, but at the age he is, and in terms of what it does for the club, does it make financial sense? But also, you're trying a different route, and we saw this over the years many times with Alex Ferguson at Man United. You know when to move a player on. That's actually really good to rebuild. And he did it famously, didn't he? When Fergie's when his Fergie's fledglings, as they called them, the class of '92 came through. No one could believe that Mark Hughes was being moved on, and Paul Ince. If somebody of you younger ones Google it, but it was seen as being like a crazy thing to do. And obviously that season they famously lost to Villa on the opening day, but they went on and won the league. So we have to believe in the manager and the coaching staff and what they're doing. And I do think they'll know quite openly now amongst them that we've probably got a little bit of a brittle nature, when it comes to big things, and we might have to change a couple of big players with the finances you might have to almost take a sideways step, a backward step to take 2 steps forward.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll get on to a couple of the transfer discussions in a second, because there's loads of comments about that. Just on the mindset piece, Michael said, I want us to have a killer mindset for the new season. Ronan says mentality needs to be improved upon massively. I wonder, with the number of new signings, how close we will get to an Emery team. It's still Dino's team for me. And I think that just speaks to your point, Kev, about maybe moving one or two on. I do think that, I know we're only at July the 8th, but I do think the longer this goes on, and there hasn't really been any concrete rumours now about Martinez for a good few weeks. Yeah. I know there was a bit about Atletico. I know there was a bit about Man United, but now Man United have kind of intimated that they're happy with Onana. So there's a lot of pieces in the on the chessboard that have to move for Emi Martinez to be gone. So I think that's less and less likely to happen. I think Ollie Watkins is less likely to happen now because of the Gyökeres to Arsenal situation. Mm-hmm. I mean, I even seen one of my old uni mates, Craig Hope from the Daily Mail, saying that Newcastle discussed Ollie Watkins as a backup to Alexander Isak. Now, one, a backup, and then two, why would you leave Aston Villa, you the main striker at Aston Villa, to go and be a backup striker to Alexander Isak, and a team that, yes, they got into Champions League, but finished on the same points as us last season? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. But the point I'm making is that the longer these things go in the window, the more difficult it is to get the deal done. And then also the less likely it is that we have a replacement to come in. And that's, I know there'd be work done in the background, but that's an Emi Martinez moving on or an Ollie Watkins moving on would be sort of, back page news. That would be the main story. And there's been nothing really that's come through. So that's why I don't think that those two go. Now, there has been talk of Jacob Ramsey being one who's potentially up for, open to looking at a move for Luca Dean to Monaco, I think has been mentioned. And Leon Bailey, who we kind of know that he's potentially available for transfer. But one, I think all bets are off for any player. But that I don't think, if the money's right for any player, then the Aston Villa would listen to it and any club would listen to it. That's just a fact. But how do you feel, Martin, about, potentially Ramsey, Leon Bailey, let's say Leon Bailey or Luca Dean, we can understand the reasons for that. But how would you feel about someone like Jacob Ramsey potentially moving on if the price was right?
I don't think it bothered me too much because I think Ramsey has shown now in recent season where he kind of gets himself a bit of a long injury, and he's out for months and he's looking to kind of get back up to scratch. And don't get me wrong, he's an incredible player, he's an incredible servant to Aston Villa, but you're kind of going to need somebody who's around 100% of the season. You can't be having players who are going to be injured 4 to 5 months of the season and then coming in and you're playing catch up in the squad. And I understand he's really valuable to us, but at the same time, he's going to be seen as pure profit at the end of the day for transfer. So rumor has it, and I've seen in a comment that supposedly he's going a rumor to Spurs. Now, if that happens, it happens. But to be honest, I don't think it bothers me too much. I think if we sell him on, I think we still have more than enough for depth and quality, and I think it really opens up a chance for Malin to really get into the team and cement his place.
Good. Not a bad shout at all. Kevin says, talking of transfers, if anyone checks the stats for Harvey Barnes versus Jacob Ramsey, it's a no-brainer. Bring me Barnes in a heartbeat. Controversial, I know. And that was kind of the chat, wasn't it, Kev, at the start of this window? I think even before the June the 30th PSR deadline, that was the talk, Ramsey Barnes swap deal. I mean, I don't know if that's likely to happen, but would you be interested in that deal? And with regards to Ramsey, the fact that he gets injured, is that affecting whether a team would buy him? Because Villa can't seem to keep him fit. So what makes another club think they can keep him fit?
Well, on the second part of the question, yeah, I think that definitely will be in people's minds if they're looking to buy him, because he does seem to always get an injury and struggle to, to shake off various ailments. In terms of the Barnes swap, it's a real tricky one, this is for me, because I think that I would argue, as is in the chat, that the stats do not lie. Was it Shakira that said that? Yeah. The stats don't lie. And it's Martin. Listen, when you've got two kids, right? You just dad jokes.
I've got it. The dad jokes are in full flow. Yeah, I've got it. That. Yeah.
Martin, the thing is, you can't help it. They just come, and you've got to get it out your mouth anyway. So, as we were, so the goals and assists, goal contributions are not good enough for a player of his, of his standing in the team. But I'll say one thing, right? I think he's got a higher ceiling potentially than Harvey Barnes if he can stay fit. And I think I could see a situation where, in a better, more potent Aston Villa team with scoring more goals, I could see him contributing a lot more goals and assists. He's had his moments in the Villa team when he's really, really been. Sorry, I apologise, Gary. Yeah. When he's really been effective, and I think he's been held back by the injuries, and then he's sort of had a lack of rhythm in the team. So my head probably says, yeah, Barnes probably could be more effective. He's also had his injuries as well, Barnes, don't forget. It's not like he's been injury free. He's had some bad injuries in his career. My head probably says Barnes, but my heart probably says I still think there's unfinished business for Ramsey at Villa.
Yeah, I can see the argument on both counts. I mean, as I say, there's so many players that if the money was right, you could see the value in selling them. You could see the justification in selling them. But then also you can see, right, they could be a real player at Villa. There's a lot that they do right, and they work in the Emery system. There's something that could be done with them. It's really difficult. But again, Gary says Ramsey hasn't improved. What does he actually do well? And then Kev says Ramsey stats 1 goal, 3 assists last season, not good enough. And Stephen said he gets injured well, and that's the thing. It's a real quandary, but it would absolutely be 100% pure profit, as you say, Martin. But I do think that there's something in the back of other teams' minds, whether it be Tottenham, Newcastle, whoever it might be, interested in Ramsey, because I'm sure he does have players interested in him. It's funny when this is another one that we've seen this week is so and so club are big admirers of X player. It's like, all right. Brilliant, but
it's like Valentine's Day.
It's like that's like me saying I'm a huge admirer of this celebrity status, and I'm going to try and talk to him, which will never happen. So you just kind of have to wait.
Do you think Jacob Ramsey's getting like dozen red roses in the box of chocolates through the post from Spurs?
Yeah, exactly. Chelsea are big admirers of Morgan Rogers. That was the last one. So it's just like, yeah, I know. Well, yeah, I'm sure they are, but Aston Villa are big admirers of Kylian Mbappe, I'm sure, but it doesn't mean that they're going to sign him. So, yeah. Anyway,
we're aware of the situation.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
But it like I say, it is a tricky one with Ramsey. As I say, I can see reasons for potentially moving him on, but I can certainly see reasons why keeping him. And back to the original sort of conversation, I can see reasons for keeping almost the whole squad together, just because of kind of what the potential of this team is. And, a lot of the time you can forget by going for something new and new and new. The longer I've thought about it, this from last season is, yes, we had disappointing moments, but, it really winds me up when some of the radio pundits or TV pundits say, oh, Villa had a potentially disappointing season. They didn't, they know they got to the Champions League quarterfinals, but they didn't manage the Champions League and the Premier League that well. But we still finished in the top 6 and got to the Champions League quarterfinal and the FA Cup semi-final. Yes, ultimately, there were disappointing performances in, the final game of the Premier League season and the FA Cup semi-final. But that, to me, was good management in terms of recognising the problems that we had in January and fixing them, but also being able to still perform fairly consistently in the Premier League and make really good progress in the cup competition. So, yeah, like, does the squad need forensic? Like, does it need overhauling? I don't think it does. And that's open to either of you, by the way.
No, I don't think it needs overhauling as such. I just think you need to kind of get rid of some fringe players who are kind of really on the big books, and on the wages in the sense of you put in George Bell, he'll probably have it all cleaned out in about a day. But when you look at Den Donker, you look at Luca Digne, for example. I know he's not really a fringe player, but when he's on really big wages and you want to talk about
Wendy, Pete would have mentioned.
Wendy is another one. When you want to talk about cutting your wages down by 10% to kind of keep you UEFA happy and kind of keep fines away, these are sort of things you're kind of going to have to get rid of. So I mean, obviously we got Robin Olsen, who was on supposedly 100 grand a week. How he was on that much money, I will never know. But with him gone, that would probably cut it down a good bit as well. So these are things that we're just going to have to do, but I don't think it needs an overhaul. You might, if you get 1 or 2 additions, maybe, but it doesn't need an overhaul. It doesn't need fixing. It's not as if we're in a crisis where we had a really bad season like Manchester United did, and now they need to overhaul the squad. Now they need to buy this and buy that. We're not in that panic mode, I don't think.
Yeah. Agreed. Guys, please do hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We are marching on to 6,000 subscribers. We've got over 200 in the chat, which is just brilliant. I think Matt has said there, it is tough without proper football at the minute, but it is round the corner, and we are back with fans forums every Tuesday, and we'll start to bring more shows to you. So please do keep with the channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and help spread the word. One player who has been rumoured to potentially be of interest to multiple clubs, including Everton, as it's been reported today, Kevin, is our very own Captain Fantastic, John Mcginn. What are your thoughts on potentially moving John Mcginn on? Because you mentioned about some of the aging players, shall we say, in the Emi Martinez, potentially Ollie Watkins at 29, 30, but John Mcginn, surely not.
No, not for me. Absolutely not. He's still a key part of this squad, and I think you've got to look at his performance against PSG. He was probably arguably up there with Rashford, our best player in that match, and he still can produce the goods, I think, for this club. And I think he's one of the players that has got the ability to take a game by the scruff of the neck and get stuck in. And even in the PSG away leg, he's probably our best performer. So I can't see John Mcginn going. I think he's someone that I don't think you'd get brilliant value for the signing with his age, probably the contract. I don't know. I might be surprised someone might pay decent money for him to make profit. Actually, what would you get for Mcginn? Would you get 15, 20 million for him? Probably.
Or I think
we were chatting about this, weren't we, Mark? We were saying, 2 years left on his contract. I think it's up to 2027. What is he, 30, 31 this year? So
30,
20 million, 25 million.
I think you get between 25, 30 million. You kind of have to look at it. He's an established Premier League player. He's our captain. He done unbelievably well in the Champions League, where he was so robust. He's so crucial to us. So we're going to have a big price tag on him, and I know he splits the fan base a lot. Oh, he's too slow at this, or he's too slow at that. But McGinn's the type of player you need in your team. You need a grafter. You need someone who's going to do all the dirty work. Because if you don't have that, your team's just going to get run over, full stop. And not only that, you lose a voice in the dressing room, a leader. And that's something we need. And we talk about signing players of mentality. He's one of them you need to keep in. And if you bring 1 or 2 players who are going to have that mentality alongside McGinn and Tyrone Mings, for example, then that's going to be great for us. So I think selling him again is just a big no. It doesn't matter what money they come in for, they just say no, because I think he's just too crucial for us.
But when we talk about FFP though, 25 million, bought him for 2.5 million.
I know.
10x,
Yeah.
No, I mean, not for me, by the way.
When you look at it like that, yeah, but you're going to make a profit on Ollie Watkins for about nearly 30 million odd, aren't you? So you're not going. So what?
Well,
that's a lot more.
So? Yeah, but what position is the club in? Do they need to? Are we in such dire straits that we need to take a 25 million off for John Mcginn? I mean, I wouldn't sell him. He'd be one of the last players I'll be selling based on what he offers to the team, just to be clear. But I'm just wondering whether, if something came in for a player like that, are the likes of a Ramsey and a Mcginn, because of the money that you'd make in terms of profit, are they more attractive to the Villa hierarchy to sell rather than, a Martinez or someone like that? Let's see.
I just think you write off John Mcginn at your peril. And he's one of an old breed of almost like a throwback of a player that every team would want a John Mcginn in their side, and that's the thing. He's, like you said, Martin, he's not the most glamorous, he's not the most skillful, he's not the most pleasing on the eye, but what he is a heartbeat of any team, and he'll be the one you go in the trenches with and you'd back. I do think I'd like to see him a bit more vocal and I think he's certainly won that respect to be able to have a go at players or to, to grab them by the scruff of the neck and tell them what's what. And I'd like to see him do that a bit more. Yes, Onana in his interview said how much of a character he is, how big he is in the dressing room, how important he is in terms of lifting the spirits and things like that. But that's one side that you've got. But when you're the captain as well, you've also got to be ready to tell players what they need to hear, not necessarily what they would like to hear. And I think I'd like to see that a little bit more from John McGinn. But in terms of what he brings to the team, it's more about what you can't buy as such as what you can buy, if you know what I mean. But so many comments coming in. Amritsar says Meatball going nowhere, crucial to Villa. Gary does say he's too slow. Dunk says he can't see McGinn going to Everton. And Kev says same as McGinn stays. Then maybe a move to Celtic. I think James has mentioned that he goes to Celtic for 10 million. Who's going to be captain then? Matt said McGinn is huge for us. I can only see him moving back to Scotland when he's finished his story at Villa. Yeah, James said only leaves for Celtic and they will pay 10 million. Peter says McGinn's value to the team can't be quantified. I'd say he punches above his weight. And Ronan said the John McGinn Mario comment today, that'll do me. Hashtag my captain. Brilliant. Yeah, you can bet that they were calling him Mario Balotelli all throughout his time at Villa. John Duran, that is. It would have been brilliant. The comparisons are just crazy in terms of John Duran, and he's like a Mario Balotelli regen, isn't he? Like on Football Manager, like literally everything from on the pitch to off the pitch is exactly the same. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Let's go to let's talk pre-season, because we've talked about the preparations, and I think the players, by the looks of it, it was only like 6 players that were back in pre-season yesterday, Kev. I think it was Jamil Aloba, Bogard, Lamar Bogard. I think he said Winston Bogard then. Lamar Bogard, Tyrone Mings, Ross Barkley, Boubacar Kamara, and Jacob Ramsey. I think that was it. So
Jacob Ramsey was fit. That's a good start.
I know, and he did. And
he was checking his watch for the heartbeat, making sure
he did the 12-minute run as well. The Cooper test. He definitely did that as well. But nice to see the players back in pre-season, albeit not many of them. I think I said that Garcia might have been there. Maybe 7 were there. Was back a week earlier. A week earlier than maybe he was intended to, when he was reported to be back. So maybe wanted to get in some extra training, but nice to see some of the players back. I'm sure some of them will start trickling in a bit more this week ahead of, is it Walsall next Wednesday, first pre-season fixture?
I think it might be the big one.
Yes. So what are your thoughts on them being back, and when will the main man be back? When will the boss be back? I didn't see any pictures of Unai there yet.
I mean, who knows? He does what he wants. I'm surprised he's left Unai, from what I've heard. I'm surprised he had any kind of holiday. Maybe he took half a day in the morning yesterday since the last season ended. It obviously means we're a step closer now. Some of the lads are back in action, so we're a step closer to football being back finally, to give us some. We've got a bit of tennis to keep us occupied, a bit of cycling. I know Michael's into cycling. I like the Tour de France as well.
I think the golf is on soon, isn't it? The Open's on.
The golf, there's always some golf on. There's always a bit of golf on. Obviously the women's Euros is on. There's plenty of stuff to keep us interested, but athletics as well. But you know what? It's not
the Gaelic football and the hurling.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
The Gaelic football and the hurling.
Nah.
I'm just naming sports here, right? If you don't want to start mentioning golf,
actually, to be fair, I was watching the Champions League first qualifying round, first leg of TNS of the Welsh League against someone else on S4 or whatever it was, which was in Gaelic. But it was some football, so I was watching it
just
to get a bit of football fix.
I'm at the point now though, like people have been saying, "Oh, the Club World Cup and all this," and I've watched some of the games, and I've switched off.
No, it's terrible. It's terrible.
A bit of peak practice on or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. A bit of Horse and Horses.
It's terrible.
It's just crap, isn't it? It'll be back soon. It'll be back soon. And you know what? That first game of the season, the expectations will be so high. Newcastle turn us over 4-0 at home. We haven't made any signings. The knives are right. We'll be wishing it was the summer again.
Who knows under pressure?
Who knows under pressure? Yeah, I know.
Kevin's saying we're going to win the lot in the car back from West Ham.
Well, that's in a couple of weeks. That'll be in a couple of weeks. Certainly.
Win it.
As soon as we make a couple of signings. Yeah. But Martin, we've announced a couple more pre-season friendlies as well. We've got, is it Marseille and Villarreal, is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 games across 2 days to end the pre-season. We've got Roma, I think, a few days before that as well. So, and obviously we go to America and play some good teams over there. So a pretty comprehensive pre-season program, and I think it's a bit more competitive than, I know we play Walsall, but we've had the likes of Tamworth being played. We've done the rounds of the local clubs, and now we seem to be, these big high prestige friendlies, which are, I say, almost kind of in between a friendly and a a competitive game, which is obviously really good for the players.
Yeah, look, it's always good to get these competitive pre-seasons in. Look, I'm one who I don't really necessarily care about results. What I really care about is player fitness, their performances. Are they up to scratch? Are they not? And like I say, if they have a bad game in pre-season, I'm not going to slate them. At the end of the day, the main priority is to get their fitness back. And that's what it is. They're going to have bad days. They're going to have great days. We're going to see youngsters who are going to be flying in the first team and then will never be seen again. So these are kind of things I always look at. But it's good to have a US tour, it's great to see now the exposure Aston Villa's got now, and hopefully it gets bigger maybe next season. We could see a different type of tour, say going to Asia for a tour, So these could be things that could be really exciting for Aston Villa. But like I say, for me, my main priority is making sure all the players are back fit for that first day of the season.
Absolutely. James said he used to like watching the Garlic football on Channel 4.
Macklin likes watching that too, I think.
Yeah, he does. Love it. Let's go to some questions.
Come on.
In the comments to finish up.
Are there any silly ones?
Possibly. We'll get some silly ones in, get some funny ones in, people.
Come on.
But Kay has asked, could you see a change in style of play this season? If so, what do you think it could be, or would you like to see, Kev?
Ooh.
I would like to see that high line used, when it worked well, because it was brilliant, wasn't it? We caught everybody offside. I know everyone's worked it out now, but maybe mix it up a little bit, because that counter-attacking football, getting the high line, keeping possession, I thought that was really effective. I can't really see there being massive styles of play changes, but you never know with Unai. I'd just like us to be a bit more. I like us to press a bit more. I like us to be a bit more energy. Get that ball back. And I think when we played at our best, look at that Newcastle game, we were everywhere. Tenacity across the pitch, and I think that kind of high energy, high press style. I know, if you got to have the squad to get yourself through the season, but I like to see it. I don't like us to be too passive.
Yeah, Gary likes to point out there was a few high lines at the Black Sabbath concert. Definitely backstage.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, allegedly. Sorry, allegedly. I wasn't there, so. And moving on. We've got a few transfer ones. Chris has asked Martin, if we had to buy to sell, who from our squad would you flog?
Who would I sell?
Well, if we had to sell to buy, would be, wouldn't it? Who would you flog?
If we had to sell to buy, so if we had to say buy a player, you'd probably say Leon Bailey. Just because you can probably
he's going to go anyway, though, isn't he? If you had to sell, I don't even know would we get big money for him. But if you had to sell, if there was to seriously improve the squad, we had to sell a big player. Who would you sell?
Probably Ollie Watkins. it'd be the time to cash in on him. He's coming into his 30s. You get a profit out of him. So you probably look at Ollie Watkins. So he'd be the one that I'd be flogging.
Kev?
This is a tricky one. Good question. Emi Martinez. I just think it's time now. I think it's time.
Yeah.
You see, I know what you're saying with Martinez at his age, but how old is he now? 32, 33?
Yeah, nearly 33, I think.
33 for a goalkeeper is like 28 for a midfielder. Like,
Yeah, I
goalkeepers
agree.
play for however long, like, so regardless of age.
Yeah, I think for me, he was definitely not at his heights last season, and I do wonder sometimes whether he's almost got a bit too big time for us. And
yeah,
I've absolutely loved everything about the Emi Martinez experience at Aston Villa. I think he's been fantastic. I think he's been a pivotal part of us getting where we're getting to. But I just sometimes think there's a time when it's right for someone to move on, and I just feel now like it is, and that's not because obviously the emotions he was showing on the last day of the season makes obviously we think it probably will happen, but I don't know if you can get a decent fee for him at he's 33 in September. I know what you mean, but he's not a young player. There are some goalies that don't go on to 37, 38, 39. I know he's not played a lot of football in his 20s compared to some goalies maybe like a Casillas, whatever. So he did a lot of loans. But still, I just feel like you can get him in. You can maybe make a bit of profit on him from what you bought him for. Well, you make quite a lot if you sell him for, who knows, 50 million, 40 million. And then if you can bring a goalie in, you might still have a bit of change left over. So, yeah, I mean, it would be with a heavy heart because it's a difficult position to replace. But I just feel like it's going to happen at some point. And you can get good value for him now. So let's do it.
I just think that if we don't sell him, I think he'll actually have a very good season. I think he'll be a bit more focused, a bit more driven to try and improve on what happened last season. Like, we know Emi Martinez is probably one of the mentality players as such. Yes, last season by his standards he wasn't good enough. He'll know that himself. But if he doesn't leave, I think he might have a big season ahead for him because he'll want to put right to wrong. You definitely want to say, right, the ones I'm saving them now at where I wasn't last season. So he want to change all that if he doesn't get his move. But if he gets his move, you might see him still in the same mindset, But in saying that, I think if he doesn't move, I think he might have a big season for us.
My only issue with selling Martinez is you're probably going to get 50 million for him, 55 million, and then you're going to have to buy like a Chevalier for 40 million. So there's not much there in terms of like you're kind of like spending the same to you're not going much in reserve for someone else. If I had to sell someone, I would sell Morgan Rogers.
Whoa!
Tell us.
120 million. Like you could bought him for 12, and then you could spend it on 3 or 4 players.
Get Danny.
I don't think he's won your sell yet. He's still 22.
I'm not saying I would sell him. I'm saying that I would if I'm saying that if you had to sell someone to be able to buy players to bring in to improve the squad, then I would sell Morgan Rogers.
Almost like a Coutinho situation with Liverpool where he was sold for 150 odd million and they instantly improved the team.
Yeah. I mean, it's a difficult question, isn't it? Because I do not want to sell Martinez. I'd rather him be our keeper next season and for the next 2 or 3 seasons. I think he's quality, but you have to be tactical. You have to time it. You have to take your opportunities where you need to. And I think that's a perfect example. Coutinho was top of his game. They couldn't believe it, and actually it changed their fortunes, didn't it?
Because also the thing is, if you sell Ollie Watkins, you're going to get 60 million. You've pretty much got to buy another striker for that amount of money. So you're kind of replacing it like for like, and then there's no guarantee that striker is going to score your goals. Morgan Rogers is a phenomenal footballer. Well, actually, no, he's not a phenomenal footballer. He's not a phenomenal footballer yet. He's had a really good season. And he's got the potential to be a phenomenal footballer, but there are still some areas of his game that he really, really needs to improve on. And I hope he does that, Aston Villa. But in terms of the the value that you could get from him and the profit that you can make from him and the stock that is around him at the moment, 100 to 125 million. Done. But anyway, that was a good question from Chris there. What else have we got? I think we've covered them. Like any sign of Barrenechea or Ilin Jr., I think we've talked about that. I think we will probably see them more. Barrenechea probably comes into pre-season from next week. Ilin Jr. probably gets a bit more time because of the under-21s championship. So I think that's the case. Bailey's obviously had time with his, because Duncan said, what happened to the Bailey Saudi deal? That could still be on the cards, but he's had time at the Gold Cup, hasn't he? So he's probably not going to be back for another 2 weeks at least.
Yeah.
So I don't think we'll see much on that side of things yet. Just one, maybe a little bit of a controversial one. I'll turn this into a question. But Gary said he didn't realise Emery is on 153,000 a week. I'll change this to a question. Does he need to win something to justify that this season? And that's the open one.
Yeah, but I think he does. Like, if he's on big wages like that, you do kind of need to justify it. And that was kind of like what I was nearly saying to Kev, like, due to the expectations, due to the achievements that we got under a short period of the time under Unai Emery, that this season an expectation would really be a trophy. Regardless, it might not be the Premier League or Europa League, but an FA Cup or a League Cup, just any sort of trophy, just to kind of see the progression that we're on, that, right, we have one. Now let's try and get the next one. We would need a starting point somewhere of winning a trophy. And I think if he's on that big money, he needs to win something. Now, I'm not saying if he doesn't win something, then say, oh, you should get rid of him. I don't think that. I think he's, like Duncan says there, he's worth every penny of it. You've seen the achievements that he's done for us in such a short amount of time. But yeah, I would still think he might need to win something next season to justify what he's on.
No, not for me. I mean, clearly the expectation is there now, and it is time for us to win something. And you think we've got a great chance in the Europa League, and we've got a good chance in the domestic cups. If we go for it, we absolutely have. But where this club has come from under his tenure, what, 2.5, just over 2.5 years, is it now? Is unbelievable. It really is. He's not even 3 years yet, and he's qualified for Europe 3 seasons in a row. Taken us to disappointing results in the FA Cup semi, Champions League quarters, but the journey we've been on. This is not me saying, "Oh, look where we've come from. We should be happy." Clearly, we have to win.
Those sentences are banned on this channel.
Yeah, I know. But I don't think any manager in world football could have done with the players the job that Emery's done. I honestly don't think Pep could have done it. Klopp could have done it. I don't think even the Blues manager could have done it. So. I don't think even Stevie Bruce could have done it. Well, So, what do we expect? That he's got to win a trophy. He's got to win a trophy. I mean, we want him to win a trophy, but look, there needs to be another good season, clearly, because the owners have got high expectations, and no one's going to get a free pass. But I think if you look at what he's done with Villa so far, every single season we've done something. We've competed really well. So, yeah, for me. I mean, he doesn't totally walk on water based on that Crystal Palace game, but he nearly does, in my mind.
Yeah, good. And I think to finish up, we'll say a big hello to our man with the big score predictions, Paul. Already getting one in for the Newcastle game on the first day of the season. Hi, Rich, Kev, and Martin. How are you guys? Miss you lots. Well, it's great to have you back, mate. And Aston Villa will beat Newcastle 7-0. Looking forward to seeing a high scores. Well, I think that would be an amazing start to the season. And I don't know if Kev, I don't know how he would be in terms of his predictions if we won 7-0 on the first game of the season. We'd be winning everything.
We're going to win the lot, Paul. We're going to win the lot. It's happening. Paul, you've really got me in a good mindset of this now. I'm going to go straight online and have a look. I don't endorse gambling, by the way, but I'm going to put £150,000 on Villa winning the league now. Do you know what? I would love it, right? If one of Paul's predictions comes in next season, I almost feel like I want to have 50p on every one, because he does such fantastic predictions. And at some point, it's got to come in.
It has to.
Actually, when my lad was, God, how old was he? Maybe, when did we beat Liverpool? 7-2.
2021.
2021.
2020-21 season. So
yeah,
yeah,
2020. He was like
late 2020. Yeah.
5-6 years old and like going to bed before the game kicked off. He's like, "What do you think the score's going to be tonight, Dad?" And I was like, "Oh, maybe like lose 2." What do you reckon? What do you reckon? And he went, "Oh, we're gonna score 7." And I was like, "Of course we will, son. Of course we will." Off he goes to bed. I'm sat there thinking, he's onto something here. This kid is. So at some point it does come true, and I'm hoping, I'm praying that Paul's prediction, start of the season, what a start that'd be, a big statement performance.
Exactly. Well, we will be here all the way to talk about that, but plenty more shows to talk about before the first game of the season. Boys, as always, really good, fun show, and you guys in the comments, you really do make it on Fans Forum nights. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button on your way out if you haven't already. We'll be back next week for Fans Forum. We've also got the first pre-season friendly to come as well next week, and hopefully some more transfer talk shows throughout the week. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel. Thank you all for watching, and as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.